It's a media bombshell. Bari Weiss is the new editor-in-chief of CBS News, causing celebration in some circles and consternation in others. Those noisemakers, they're largely on the right. You'd think that someone who self-identifies as center-left and is a member of the LGBTQ plus community might be greeted with open arms by Democrats, but the opposite is true. New York Times columnist Jamelle Bouie posting on Blue Sky, quote, "It's a heartwarming story of how being an unethical and talentless hack is no barrier to success when you are willing to endlessly flatter the wretched views of rich dipshits." He's not alone in his alarm. Just take a look at some of these headlines. And word is that CBS News employees are not exactly rolling out the welcome wagon. One allegedly said this feels like some sort of doomsday. Another told The Guardian a throwing up emoji is not enough of a reflection of the feelings in here. So who is Bari Weiss, and why is she causing such strong reactions? 41 years old, she's worked at the editorial pages of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. She was known as someone who was willing to take on the left for becoming too strident, too extreme. In 2020, during widespread rioting, the New York Times printed an editorial by Senator Tom Cotton. You might remember this. He argued that it might be a good idea to send in the military to quell riots, a fairly popular idea with the public. This was considered so controversial, even harmful, by workers at the Times that they revolted. Weiss tweeted that this was an ideological battle between free speech advocates and young social justice warriors. Her colleagues did not accept this explanation and argued that people like Weiss were basically trolling liberal readers and putting out pieces that harmed the New York Times' legitimacy. The fallout was so great that editor James Bennett, who published the piece, resigned. And a month later, Bari Weiss resigned, feeling bullied by her colleagues and not protected by the paper. She also accused the Times of being biased. Then she started a popular Substack newsletter, eventually called the Free Press, also the name of her media company. She's become one of the most successful of a new crop of media platforms, in part because of her willingness to be a critic of the legacy media, as she calls it, which she has just joined. And this year, newly formed merger Paramount Skydance, run by David Ellison, son of billionaire Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison, purchased the Free Press for $150 million and put Weiss in charge of CBS News. At present, there are rumors that David Ellison might purchase Warner Brothers Discovery, the parent company of CNN. Day one on the job, Bari Weiss distributed a list of 10 core principles that should guide the news division. Here are the first three. 1, journalism that reports on the world as it actually is. 2, journalism that is fair, fearless, and factual. 3, journalism that respects our audience enough to tell the truth plainly wherever it leads. Nothing controversial that I see in any of that. Perhaps a better insight into what's to come at CBS can be found in Weiss's words 8 months ago, before there was any indication that she'd be tapped to invigorate the Tiffany network. Last February, Weiss traveled to London, where she addressed ARC, or the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, whose leadership includes Niall Ferguson, Douglas Murray, and Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Weiss delivered a speech that she titled "Against the Vandals." And this was Bari Weiss's explanation of what happened politically, worldwide and in the U.S., over the last decade. It was both an autopsy of the left and a cautionary tale for the right. She believes the left failed to police its ranks, enabling outsized influence from its extreme elements. Here's her explanation of the last decade. Quote, "A few years ago, nearly every millennial in nearly every influential seat in America decided that police departments descended from slave patrols. So we were told we had to abolish the police. We had to abolish prisons. They said the existence of America was a crime, that we had to do land acknowledgments before every meeting and declare our gender in email signatures. They said that degrowth and socialism were the only way to go and that too many kids would kill the planet. They said that Marx, who none of these people actually bothered reading, must be revered, and that our founders, whom they had no interest in outside of a Broadway show, must be reviled. There were riots. They tore down statues. What didn't get renamed got transformed entirely from within. Eventually, people got tired of this insanity. Normal people. The people who decide elections have their limits. Bottom line, Bari Weiss believes the left lost because the far left destroyed the center left. And you can guess who doesn't want to hear that. The perpetrators on the far left. But they aren't the only ones who should be nervous about the ascent of Bari Weiss. So too those on the far right, for whom her London speech was a warning. As she put it, this group says that we're in a war here at home, and that because it's war, because the stakes are life and death, the normal rules of the game must be suspended. They say those who don't go along are squishes or traitors, or were secret leftists all along, or they accuse them of being conservative or Republican in name only, which is a version of false consciousness Marxists were so fond of telling people they suffer from. They say that it's not enough to return to normal, that returning to normal isn't an option, and instead, it's time to give the other side a taste of their own medicine. They say they were treated cruelly, and so cruelty is the necessary response. They say the thing that we are trying to conserve has already been destroyed and perhaps never even existed at all. They say that reform is a loser strategy and that the whole thing needs to be burned down. Like the far left, they have no use for history, but judge people living and dead in the ideological light of presentism, or simply reimagine them from scratch. So, who are the real vandals as referenced in Bari Weiss's speech title? It was a reference to those on the left who've torn down statues of Winston Churchill, and those on the right who've improperly invoked his name, claiming he's the villain of World War II. In short, speaking in London to a friendly audience long before being tapped to lead a legacy outlet, she was erudite, independently thinking, an equal opportunity offender. Or, as she told CBS employees in her opening memo, item number 6, journalism that holds both American political parties to equal scrutiny. Her arrival at CBS could not come at a better time. The data suggests there's a market for this type of independent journalism that Weiss is promoting. According to Gallup, in its most recent party identification survey, 43% of Americans regard themselves as independent, compared to 28% who say they are Republicans and 28% who ID as Democratic. Isn't it about time somebody tried to sell sneakers to independents? So to Bari Weiss, good night and good luck. Let's see what you're saying via social media. You can find me on X. You can follow my YouTube channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, as a matter of fact. Beta testing. Any move that is done to reposition journalism along the Weiss 10-point memo is a welcome change. I think CBS already has great talent, so let's see if this is more of a slight shift than a sea change. I agree. The 10 points, pull them, access them. There's nothing controversial about them. But I think far more telling is the speech that I referenced that you can also find that she delivered in London, presumably long before she had any idea that she might end up running CBS News. I want to remind you, go to my website at smerconish.com. Answer today's poll question very simply. Will the Gaza deal lead to peace between Palestinians and Israelis? We certainly hope so. Still to come, the government shutdown shows no sign of ending. Is there someone who might be able to break the gridlock? I'll ask former Senator Joe Manchin. And be sure to sign up for my smerconish.com daily newsletter, for which Steve Breen created this illustration.